now to talk about actually the words of the Master, the words of the Master. We know that Y'shua, when he walked the earth, he was, of course, he taught from the Torah. And so we always want to begin by dealing with the Torah first. When we go to look at the words of the Master, it's interesting that he's giving you Torah principles. But we have to actually have the knowledge of what the Torah actually says in order to see that. And so we want to now deal with, because we're kind of going in chronological order actually, when we're dealing with the words of the Master, the things that he literally spoke. If you was to combine all of the Gospels together and put them in time order, we're kind of still at the beginning. But here what we're going to look at is John chapter 3. Let's see here. It's John chapter 3, 1 through 21. So we'll go ahead, we'll just read through the chapter, and then we'll go ahead and pick up on some of these key points. There's a lot of things in this chapter we want to get through, but let's go ahead and just read through chapter 3 down to verse 21. 1 through 21.
Yep. And there, John chapter 3. And there was a man of the Pharisees, Nicodemus was his name, a ruler of the Yuhadim. This one came to Y'shua by night and said to him, Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher come from Elohim, for no one is able to do these things you do if Elohim is not with him. Y'shua answered and said to him, Truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born from above, he is unable to see the reign of Elohim. Nicodemus, what's the right pronunciation so I can say it right? I just want to say it right.
That says Nakdemon.
Nakdemon? I don't use this version, so just like it's Nicodemus. See, I study with a completely different version, so if y'all see me,
Nicodemus.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's Nicodemus. It's the Greek.
All right.
That's what we're used to.
I don't look at it like that. Okay. So Nicodemus, I'm doing it again. Nicodemus said to him, how is a man able to be born when he is old? Is he able to enter into his mother's womb a second time and be born? Y'shua answered, Truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born of water and the Spirit, he is unable to enter into the reign of Elohim. That which has been born of the flesh is flesh, and that which has been born is the Spirit, is spirit. Do not marvel that I say to you, you have to be born from above. The wind blows where it wishes, and you hear the sound of it, but do not know where it comes from and where it goes. So is everyone who has been born of the Spirit. Nicodemus answered and said to him, how is it possible for this to take place? Y'shua answered and said to him, are you the teacher of Israel and do not know this? He said a lot right there. Truly, truly, I say to you, we speak what we know and witness what we have seen, and you do not receive our witness. If you do not believe when I spoke to you about earthly matters, how are you going to believe when I speak to you about the heavenly matters? And no one has gone up into the heaven except for he who came down from the heaven, the son of Adam. And Moshe lifted up the serpent in the wilderness. Even so, the son of Adam has been lifted up, so that whoever is believing in him should not perish but possesses everlasting life. For Elohim so loved the world that he gave his only begotten, yeah. My mind just automatic. I'm not even reading right now. You're not reading because that word is not there. So my brain just filled it in right there. That's funny to me. Where we at? Okay. For Elohim did not send his son into the. Let me go up. Okay, verse 16. For Elohim so loved the world that he gave his only brought forth son, so that everyone who believes in him should not perish but possesses everlasting life. For Elohim did not send his son into the world to judge the world, but that the world through him might be saved. He who believes in him is not judged, but he who does not believe is judged already, because he has not believed in the name of the only brought forth son of Elohim. People don't even know what that just said right there. Because if you say you don't believe, that means you already cut your chance off from believing. Like everything that he did and said, you say you don't believe that was good, you don't got a chance for good now. You cutting yourself off. But my bad, I'm jumping the gun on. And this is the judgment, that the light has come into the world, and men love the darkness rather than the light, for their works were wicked. For everyone who is practicing evil matters hates the light and does not come to the light, lest his work should be exposed. You said 21?
Yeah.
Okay. But the one doing the truth comes to the light, so that his works are clearly seen and that they have been wrought in Elohim.
Okay, all right. Very good. So let us go back up to the top and deal with a few things over here. We see that there was a man that was a Pharisee who was Nicodemus, this ruler of the Jews. And so it's interesting when we look and see here, kind of, from the beginning, the conclusions that were made based on what it is that Nicodemus is saying over here. Because he said over here in verse 2, we know that thou art a teacher come from Elohim, for no man can do these miracles that thou dost, except Elohim be with him. So I'm talking these conclusions I'm talking about. He's saying that we, by the way, he came there by himself. He's saying we. I don't know who we are, right? I don't know if he's speaking in the royal we, or if he's speaking about others. Because again, this is Nicodemus coming at nighttime. He kind of sneaking away from the main group of Pharisees. He's a ruler in Israel. The Pharisees were the teachers of the law at the time. Nicodemus here was one of them. It's interesting that he goes and sees Y'shua by night. It's the way that he's doing it, he's kind of sneakily doing it. If we understand the life of Messiah, he ends up being killed by the rulers of Israel at the time. So there was some that, of course, were against Y'shua and his mission, and there was some that was for it. The ones that were for it most likely were sneakily for it, right? And so we see that right here. What?
If they wanted to live, they would.
Oh yeah, or maintain their positions, right? And so he goes over here, and there's a lot that can be said when we just look at these first couple of verses. First of all, he says to Messiah, Nicodemus does rabbi. He says to him, Rabbi. He's calling him Rabbi. Now, we at this time, when we think about rabbi, we think of it kind of being synonymous with the word teacher. But rabbi don't mean teacher. You called your teacher rabbi, but the word rabbi don't mean teacher. It actually means my great one. Like rabbi is like your high exalted one. Right? Literally, that's what it literally means. And you call your teacher that. And so here, this guy is Nicodemus, who is a teacher himself. But he's paying respect to Messiah, understanding who he is. And by the way, as I began talking about this, saying this is kind of in chronological order. So this is like at the very beginning of what Y'shua has been doing. He ain't really did a whole lot. He's making a little bit of things, but the little bit of things that he's doing is amazing. And these people are seeing what he's doing, and so much so that Nicodemus is like, man, I got to get over here and see what's going on with this guy. Because he must be from Elohim because of what he's doing.
Right.
Because of these miracles and things that he's performing, he must be from Elohim. And so, you know, he goes to see him at night. He pays him these it's a compliment. It's a complimentary term of endearment and respect at this time, this word. But, you know, by the way, when Yeshua talks about call no man rabbi, he's not saying call no man teacher, because the word don't mean teacher. But you look at that guy like that, as he's this high exalted one. And so you give him this high title. Right, and so that's what Yeshua was talking about when he said, but we're not talking about that right now. But we want to, it's interesting to just even think about Nicodemus and what he's doing because when you think about kind of the you know, his status, he's someone, the people should be coming to where he's at, Nicodemus. If you want to know something, you actually should go and talk to him. And then he can expound on whatever needs to be expounded upon. But here we see the ones who are the teachers going to the master teacher, who is Y'shua. Creeping by night to not be seen. Yeah, he's sneaking over there. And so when we look at, it's interesting when we look at the thing.
You know why he did that?
Go ahead.
Because the people would think less of him. Like, they esteem him. If you know something greater than me and it's executed and you're known for it, and I know that you don't have it, and I got a lot of people looking at me, and I go to you for something, and I esteem you greater, the people looking at me will esteem you greater than me.
Yeah.
Because I went to you for something or for some help.
Yeah.
And now that could potentially, that upsets the balance, because those people can go to him, and then if he got that knowledge, now you gained all those people.
Yeah.
In terms of rulership.
Yeah.
We're thinking on the mind of, you got to think how a ruler would think. I got all these people and they're convinced in their mind to follow me for these reasons. But if I got to go to somebody else for this reason because I don't know, maybe this guy's better than him.
Yeah. Which is a little prideful, by the way.
Exactly, because he want to keep his status. So he sneakily, and he bows to him.
Yeah. I guess in the true spirit of humility, he would have openly went to Messiah and let the people go and see him do it.
Yep.
And so
that's why he snuck.
But when we look at these people, obviously, I don't know his heart or his intentions. I can see the fault in it when we look at it. But it's interesting that, you know, that he it still takes a bits of humility to be able to go and do because I'm just gonna
To go do what he did?
to go with it.
He completely humbled himself.
I'm just
but
gonna.
he don't want to show that publicly.
No.
That's the point.
But I'm trying to give him credit though. I'm trying to give him a little bit of
Well,
credit.
yeah,
But-
because he would have been stupid to not go to him.
Well, he had to go.
So he has some smarts.
He had to. Yes. He
That's the
had
thing.
to.
He got some smart because the thing is, if somebody's greater than you in something, and you have the option or the chance to go to them, and you don't to fix something or do whatever, you don't go to them. You're the stupid one now.
Yeah.
So he had that level of smarts with him being a ruler. To be a ruler, you got to have some smarts at all. I would think.
And humility.
Right.
And humility, a measure, a measure of, because in his humility we can see the pride in the full thing. But there was a measure, because I just had to say, just full disclosure. I don't really want to listen to a lot of people. I'm just saying. I'm just as a human being.
Exactly.
I'm not perfect. I'll turn somebody off in a minute.
Easy.
I'll turn them off so fast.
Easy.
What did he say? Oh, he don't know what he talking about.
Yeah,
But that's pride, though. That's pride in me.
It is. It is. But yeah, there's a balance to everything.
But that's what that is. But it's interesting that in the middle of all of this, the things that are spoken about in this private conversation are really kind of some of the most foundational things that we have in the life of Messiah.
Yep. It is.
He was like, he went past all the milk.
Yeah.
This is meat right
It's
here.
like meat.
Yeah.
And we see that he wasn't really able to get it fully, but Y'shua spoke to this man according to the stature that he was at.
Right. Exactly.
And he gives them these things that, thankfully, the disciples were around to be able to. John at least was able to know what was going on over here, because these things, as we begin to look at, are they're foundational things over here. Starting with verse 3, where he says, "I say unto you, except a man be born from above or born again, he cannot see the kingdom of Elohim."
And that's what people don't understand to this day. Because to be born again, especially from above, you got to clean your slate. Everything you think that you know is right, your basis for what's right and wrong starts with the Bible. Start with the commandments, and then everything's supposed to build off of that in your mindset. So you kind of got to reverse engineer all these ideas that we're taught in this world, especially you coming back to the pureness. You got to reverse engineer it, because your base got to be these concepts that he teaches. If it go outside of that, it's not, more chances it's not right. Because people get these gray areas. Oh, well, that's not in the Bible, or this is not. But there's a foundational principle that can build up to that decision being wrong.
Yeah. And so he says over here, he says that if you want to even just see the kingdom of Elohim, right, just looking at it, which is interesting. Because, if you say, for instance, are riding down, what's that road that's next to Kennywood? What road is that? Is Kennywood on?
That's Kenwood Boulevard.
If you just on Kennywood Boulevard, you can see Kennywood.
I thought he was joking, Kennywood Boulevard, that's what it be on. I was
I don't know what it's called.
Yeah.
So if you're on that boulevard, you can see Kennywood. But you're not in it though, right?
Right.
You see all the roller coasters.
You can see the people. You might, if you got your window down while you riding through, you can hear the people screaming.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, this word here deals with the idea of perceiving it and also experiencing it. Because remember, we think about the word ra'ah in the Hebrew, which literally means to see, but it's kind of the same as the bird of prey that sees from above the thing that's down below, but when he sees it, he's about to experience it.
Right.
He's about to come down and deal with the thing that he's seeing. So there's sight, but there's perception, and then you're actually experiencing the thing.
Right.
And so when it says over here that one, unless you're born from above, you're not able to see the kingdom of Elohim, it's not talking about seeing it from the outside. Because quite frankly, anybody can see the kingdom of Elohim from the outside. It don't take nothing to see it from the outside. In fact, that's your default, seeing it from the outside. That's where we ended at, over in the end of the chapter. Default is seeing the kingdom from the outside. But you're not able to see it, perceive it, experience it from the inside unless you're born from above. So what do that even mean? What do that even mean to be born from above? If we look at that word born, look at that word born in the Greek. You know, we're in the Greek text. The word born, it means to procreate. It literally means to procreate, to regenerate, to bear. It has all these words: beget, born, bring forth. The scripture says brought forth, or what's it say? Born. Oh, it says born here. Some other places it might say other things, right? But the idea is born just like how we would think of it as, right? Again, or from above. And so when we think about the idea that is given you, Greek's very literal. It literally means to be born from above. It literally means to be born again, which when we see Nicodemus, this is where the confusion comes in. What
do that mean?
What you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, how am I supposed to, full grown man, supposed to crawl back up into the placenta or whatever? I don't know. I don't know how that works. I don't even know.
Dang, the
my fault,
placenta.
uterus.
That's funny.
I don't know the parts, right? And so he's confused. He don't understand this because he said what he said. You must be born again if you want to see, perceive, experience the kingdom of Elohim.
But what do that mean?
He gonna tell you. He gonna tell you. But he just kind of slow simmering with it, because again, when we look at verse 5, read verse 5 again for us here.
Okay, I'll read off your screen. Y'shua answered, "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born of the water and the Spirit, he is unable to enter into the reign of Elohim."
Okay, now he added more situations to the thing over here, because before he said see, and we had to think about it more deeply to understand that he meant more than just looking. But over here he says enter. He said but not only did he add the enter part, but he said, and he didn't even say born from above, he said these other things. And so now, as he's introducing more information, he's helping us to understand what being born from above actually is. He said, he's still talking about the same thing. He's not giving Nicodemus all of these different things, but he's saying these things differently though. He says here, unless one is born of water and of the Spirit, he's unable to enter the kingdom of Elohim. So when we see verse 5, it helps us better to understand verse 3, that he's not talking about seeing, but he's actually talking about getting in there. But it still leaves us the question of what does it mean? And so he begins to talk about these, he adds these other things, this born of water and of the Spirit. So what in the whole world is he talking about over here? So let's look at some things, because again, Y'shua is a Torah teacher, right? Oh, hold on. What does what do we have here? Y'shua broke him down to his very last compound. The Pharisee was shook off of the teachings of the master. He really was. There was confusion. There was confusion. And when you think about, we talked about this the other week, there's things that Y'shua did in his life where it took his disciples the whole time that he was with them to after he actually died to be able to even understand what it was that he did when he was here.
That's what I be doing. That happens with me and my wife all the time. I'll tell her something, and the reason, she won't understand the reason till days, weeks, months, years later.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's why he was like, don't do this or that. Yeah, because I already seen it. He said, see. So I seen it. Mm-hmm. And so this was the decision I made already.
Yeah. So let's think about that. Let's think about born of water. Let's think about born of water. When we go back to Numbers 19, for instance, when we go back to Numbers 19, and we're going to read the chapter there, but I'll just reference Numbers 19 is the red heifer, right? Numbers 19 is where it talks about the red heifer, where there's sacrifice, so there's blood, and there's washing. And when we think about, if you don't know about Numbers 19, I encourage that you read Numbers 19, because there's some peculiar things that go on, because it's necessary, if you touch a dead body, to wash your body, to physically wash your body, and then be sprinkled with this water so that you can be cleansed. So you physically washed your body, you got under some water and some soap and washed it. You physically washed it. But then you also needed to be sprinkled with the sacrificed heifer that was burnt into ashes and mingled with water and put into a container and splashed on you. And so you had kind of this ceremonial washing that also had to happen so that you could be cleansed. You had a physical, literal cleansing that you had to do, and there was a ceremonial cleansing that you had to do, and if you didn't do it, you wasn't clean. And so when we look at the Torah teaches us about these washings that are both literal and ceremonial, but most important, necessary for your cleansing. What was you gonna say?
I'm just saying, like, how so far we're removed from that. Could you imagine taking an animal, burning it to ashes, put it in water, you being somewhere and them sprinkling it on you? But this is what the Most High said to do in the beginning. Like, there's some real spiritual significance of, like,
right,
energy or some energy transference that we're not fully aware of.
Yeah.
That process took place and how it transformed with Y'shua to now, man.
Well, I think one of the things that we're able to think about when we look at that, the peculiarity about it, is the fact that this thing that Messiah is calling for us to do is peculiar. Mm-hmm. You mean to tell me, when I believe in Messiah, if I get down here in this water in your name, it's an open show of me being cleansed, and being a disciple of you. Like there's no soap over there. I'm not washing my body, but it cleanses my soul though. It doesn't ever touch my insides, my heart, my spirit. The water didn't. But it cleanses me though. And so the same thing is true when we think about Numbers chapter 19, is there's this thing going on where this thing that the water's, it's literally dirty. It's got ashes in it. But it cleanses you though. And so there's these.
That heifer was unclean.
Everybody that was involved in the preparation of the cleansing water,
That was unclean.
they needed to be cleansed. There's so much kind of like mysteriousness about this cleansing thing. But inside of all of the mystery, still cleansed you though. And so over here, he's saying, you got to be born of the water. Well, what's he talking about? Well, I'm saying that he's probably talking about the thing that he instructs his disciples to do for all of his ministry. He did it for his own self. The scripture says he did it to fulfill all righteousness. But let's look over at, we're talking about being born of water, this idea of being cleansed by water. Let's look at, what's he saying here? You are even born of water in natural 9-10 months of bearing. From a physical standpoint, yes. From a physical standpoint, yes, but he's not talking about that water. And the ambionic fluid. What's that? Is that ambionic fluid? Hey, I be knowing some stuff now. He's not talking about that water. But the significance, though, it's a similar thing, because even in that natural water, there's blood.
And remember when Whiskey was born, you saw, well, even when little Naomi came out, she didn't even come out to air directly. She came out to water. She went from water to water. And then whenever Whiskey came out, you saw his whole body collapsed in.
Yeah, because he didn't have no air yet. I thought there was something wrong with my little brand new baby when he came out. His little body was just so deflated. But it wasn't deflated. It would never became inflated. But he came out of the blood and the water. But he's talking about something over here after that. That's why Nicodemus is like, what you talking about? I was already born of water. But he's saying that you got to do something else besides the natural process. You got to do this other thing. But I want to look at Ezekiel 36, 25, and 26. Ezekiel chapter 36, verses 25 and 26. But we're going to see this other thing that got to do with water and your cleansing. And interestingly enough, well, I don't want to spoil it. Go ahead.
36, 25.
36, 25, and 26.
Okay. And I shall sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean. From all your filthiness and from all your idols I cleanse you. 26. And I shall give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. And I shall take the heart of stone out of your flesh, and I shall give you a heart of flesh.
Hallelujah. So, over here, when we look at one of the foundational New Covenant verses over here, talking about removing the stony heart and replacing it with a heart of flesh. The first thing he says is, then will I sprinkle clean water on you. It hints back to being sprinkled with the red heifer water and being made clean. You're sprinkled with this water, and now from a ceremonial standpoint, it said, and from all you shall be clean from the sprinkling from all of your filthiness. So this is how we know this is like a ceremonial thing that's going on. It's not soap, right? It's not soap and water. But it's this ceremonial, mysterious thing that's going on, that's going to happen. And now you've been made clean. Let's look at Isaiah 52 and 15. Isaiah 52 and 15. Yeshayahu 52, verse 15.
He shall likewise startle many nations. Sovereigns shut their mouths at him, for what he had not been recounted to them they shall see, and what they had not heard they shall understand.
Okay, this is a very interesting verse because when we think about Isaiah 52 and 15, first of all, it's interesting that the scriptures version, sometimes I gotta just have the King James version. Because he says, so shall he sprinkle the nations. Sprinkle's not wrong, because if I came up to you and sprinkled you with some water, it would startle you. Because that's what it's talking about. Right? If I sit up there and I wash my hands, and then like when you was little, you wash your hands and you don't drown, and you go to your little sibling or whatever and sprinkle them. It startles them. It startles. Just the water, right? It startles you. So the word's not wrong. But you're startled because you were sprinkled. And so shall he sprinkle many nations, the Gentiles. And the king shall shut.
What's them sprinkles though?
Exactly.
What's
this is
those
what we're talking
sprinkles?
about. This thing that got to do with being cleansed with water.
Uh-huh.
And then it says, for that which had not been told them shall they see. Mm-hmm. They know about things that's not in their it's not in their culture to know about. They know about things that nobody told them about, and that which they had not heard shall they consider. The Gentiles let me just say the Gentiles understand this idea here of rebirth, born again, better than a lot of these Israelites do. Because these Israelite people think that all I got to do is tell you that you're Israel and you're good.
That's it.
And that's all you need.
Nah.
But Messiah is over here saying to the ruler of the Jews, he already know who he is. What did he have to awaken in him? Nothing. No thing did he have to awaken in him. He said to him who already knew who he was, you must be born of water and of the Spirit. There's something that has to happen to you so that you can see, enter, experience the kingdom of Elohim. I'm saying that when he says born of water, he's speaking of the thing that he instructs his disciples to do, which is immersion. It's this curious cleansing procedure that's done. When we look at the New Testament, when we look at the book of Acts, when we look at the final instructions given to Y'shua, they were supposed to go out and immerse people. And introduce them into this idea of this cleansing. And again, we think about the cleansing, right? Again, it's this physical cleansing, but it's spiritual though. It's physical because your life's gonna change. You're not gonna be walking around doing dirty things anymore. You're gonna be doing clean things, right? So the internal change that happens because of the ceremonial sprinkling that happens, the internal change is going to there's also going to be an external change. So we see the both things are included in this washing thing that he's talking about over here. And so also he said, born of water and born of the Spirit, which of course is the new covenant, which we talked about in Ezekiel 36. We talk about the idea of the Spirit you receiving a spiritual heart transplant. Let's read again. We're still talking about born of the Spirit, but read verses 6, 7, and 8 here.
What book? What we still in?
John chapter 3, yeah.
Okay. John 3 and 6. That which has been born of the flesh is flesh, and that which has been born of the Spirit is spirit. Do not marvel that I say to you, you have to be born from above.
You keep on saying it. This is a key point. You got to be born of above. Go ahead.
Verse 8. The wind blows where it wishes, and you hear the sound of it, but you do not know where it comes from and where it goes. So is everyone who has to be born of the Spirit.
Okay, so let me just say, when you're born of the Spirit, you don't turn into like a ghost and you're able to walk through walls. You don't become like the wind and just go where you willst. Right? And nobody knows where you was at except for the residue of you being there. Right? The ectoplasm that's left behind from you being there. Right? But when it talks about the idea of the wind blow, the master teacher, Messiah, he's schooling him over here. Think about the wind. The wind blows. Where did it come from? You don't see it, but you see the effects of it.
Exactly.
When that spirit comes in you, when you really are reborn from above, there's a way about you that manifests itself. And where did it come from?
Thou knowest not. It's like, but it came, we know where it comes from.
Thou knowest not where it came from. Well, you do know it came from above.
But see, a lot of people don't perceive it like when it comes to you, or what that voice that's talking to you to change. That's him. That's him knocking. Him trying to get you to, because we don't know where it comes from. Everybody got a story when they were walking a certain way and they changed their life. And like, if you ask everybody what made you change your life, everybody's point to change was different. Because the wind came to him when it came to him.
Yeah. Right, and it's a non-tangible thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right, it's not something that you can pick up and touch and feel. Right, it's intangible. It's like the wind. The wind blows, it'll be knocking trees down. You know that it blew. And so the Spirit, when you think about your spirit, here, read Titus 3, 4 through 7. Titus chapter 3, verse 4 through verse 7.
But when the kindness and the love of Elohim, our Savior, toward man appeared, he saved us, not by works of righteousness, which he have done, but according to his compassion, through the washing of regeneration, or rebirth, and renewal by the set-apart Spirit, which he poured out on us richly through Y'shua Messiah, our Savior, that having been declared right by his favor, we should become heirs according to the expectation of everlasting life.
Paul, being a disciple of Messiah, talks to us about this idea of regeneration. Which is the same thing as born from above. Regeneration, born from above, same exact thing.
Mm-hmm.
He said over here, through the washing of regeneration and renewal by the set-apart Spirit, which is poured out on us richly through Y'shua HaMashiach. This idea of regeneration, this idea of the thing that is necessary for you to be able to enter into the kingdom of Elohim is something. This is the something that must be done. You must be regenerated. And so when we think about the idea of regeneration, just from a definition, English definition of the word regeneration in theology is the new birth by the grace of Elohim, is the change by which the will and the natural enmity of man to Elohim and his law are subdued, and a principle of supreme love to Elohim and his law or holy affections are implanted in your heart. It's talking about the idea of what we read in Ezekiel chapter 36 of taking away the stony heart and replacing it with the heart of flesh. I used to be an enemy of Elohim. Now I am a friend of Elohim. I used to hate the things that he talked about, and now I love the things that he talks about. I used to walk around in iniquity and wickedness, but now I want to live a life of righteousness.
Can I get some clarity on that stony heart?
Go ahead.
Because he talks about, that's what holds everybody back from receiving him. Does a stone live?
Stone dead in a mug.
Does a stone live? No. So a stone is dead. Now, flesh, does it live? Flesh the thing is that flesh is dependent on other things to live. A stone can exist by itself and stay the same way longer than living organisms.
That's what it's the same. Hold on, you need to say that again. You said something right there. What you just said?
I'm saying that a stone does not live. It's not dependent. You could put a stone in space. What they say space is, and this thing's just going. Yeah, because that's a debate, right? Is it water out there? Is it going to float? Is it going? Who knows? Is it going to fall to the side? But how the Hollywood depiction is you float in space. So you put a rock. They show just stuff. Rocks just and guess what? We do live on a rock because the rock sustain this formation, does all this. But there's places where it's fertile. So, but this place, one thing that they want to do and go out in space is find another place like this rock that can support all this life and do what it does. But the Most High made this like this, and they're looking for something else like it. Now, going back to us being made like flesh, anything that provides something to live is good. Like he said from the beginning when he made everything. That flesh, for it to continue to live, and that means it's accepting all the good things. Otherwise, you become like the stone, and you are nothing. You're not living, basically.
You dead.
You dead.
You stagnant. You said a rock is just going to stay whatever that rock is. It just stays like that. But something that's alive, it's evolving, it's growing, it's thriving. With blood and water, by the way.
Right. Yeah.
So it's interesting that we think about the heart that's pumping blood, liquid, through your body. Is alive. But we're talking about the idea of the spirit being born of the spirit, being regenerated. Let's think about some regeneration verses. Look over at Ephesians. Ephesians 1. Ephesians 1, 13 and 14.
It's the King James Version. Just let everybody know.
KJV, yeah. Go ahead.
I know when I'm switching it up on y'all. You know what I'm saying? In whom ye also trusted, after that ye heard the word of truth, the gospel of your salvation, in whom also after that ye believed, ye were sealed with that Holy Spirit of promise, which is the earnest of our inheritance until the redemptions of the purchased possession unto the praise of his glory.
Okay, so there's some interesting things over here in Ephesians chapter 1, 13 and 14. He's talking about things that are incorporated in regeneration. He said, you were sealed by the Ruach HaKodesh of promise, which is the earnest of our inheritance. So you were sealed. If you go to buy a thing, the way that you secure that thing, where you don't allow for anybody else to come and take things out from up under you, is you put a down payment on it. That word earnest, which is the earnest of our inheritance, is a down payment. It's a seed. When we talk about the idea of regeneration, it is a seed of the Spirit being placed on the inside of you. And by that, you're sealed. It says you're sealed with the Holy Spirit of promise. And so when we walk in the Spirit, when we give in to the Spirit that's inside of us, the Spirit grows. But this is regeneration. We talk about the idea, again, going backwards. We think about the Spirit, being born of the Spirit looks like something. We talk about the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, long-suffering. When we walk in these things, these self-control, these manifestations of the Spirit in you, a regenerated spirit look like something. Mm-hmm. And so again, we talk about this over here in Ephesians, talking about this idea of being sealed by this down payment of the Spirit that's pushed inside of you. Read 2 Corinthians 1 and 22.
Who have also sealed us and given the earnest of the Spirit in our hearts.
Same thing. He sealed us. You've been regenerated. You've been sealed and given that down payment of the Spirit inside of you, so that you could now walk in righteousness. That's a new covenant. Yeshua is talking about the new covenant. We didn't even know it when he said being born of the Spirit, because what is he talking about? But it's interesting. It's interesting when we go back and we look back to John chapter 3, read verses 9 and 10 here from John chapter 3.
Nicodemus answered and said to him, how is it possible for this to take place? Yeshua answered and said to him, are you the teacher of Israel and do not know this?
He's talking to Nicodemus, who teaches the Torah. He's talking to him about the new covenant, which comes from the Tanakh.
Uh-huh.
He's a teacher of Israel. He's supposed to know about this.
Exactly.
But and he's teaching him about these things that are, in fact, spiritual. Mm-hmm. But he don't know it. He don't know what he's saying. Yeshua said, Moses wrote of me. Yeshua said that. Moses wrote of me. If we look at Luke 24 and 44, he goes through to his disciples and goes through the law of Moses and the writings and the prophets and shows them all the places where it talks about Yeshua. And so when we think about these ideas, the new covenant, this thing that from an old, quote unquote, Old Testament perspective that looks forward to Messiah, if these people is really doing it, they're supposed to be able to see Messiah. They're supposed to be able to. Nicodemus is supposed to have been able to. Messiah, Yeshua is supposed to be talking to Nicodemus, and he's supposed to be like, yeah. That is right. What you said, that is right. But he's like, what you mean? How is this even possible? what you're talking about. How am I supposed to get back at my mom's womb? Like, what is this thing that you're speaking of? But again, these things that he's talking about are of the utmost importance, because if you aren't changed, if you never have a spiritual transformation that happens on the inside of you, you'll never see the kingdom of heaven.
Another way to say it, I don't know, this came to me, it's like, be born again, basically to be reset. It's like, you know, when your computer or your whatever start acting up, they got a chip, you turn it off and then turn it back on and it's acting right. You got to wipe away everything that it did and then start fresh, and then the new instructions causes those issues to go away, and now it's working good.
Okay, from the technologist's perspective, you got to have, it got to be a factory reset.
Yeah,
It got to be a factory reset, and it got to be new software that's installed.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta update it.
You gotta update that old software. Ain't gonna work no more. It's just gonna have you getting into them same situations over and over again. You
That's
need
true.
that new software
Yeah.
installed
That's
after
a
the
fact.
factory reset.
That's a fact.
You need that Ruach HaKodesh
Exactly.
2.0 placed inside of you.
Yep.
You need an old thing taken out and the new thing put in.
Exactly.
And so it's funny the way that Messiah is doing this. He's speaking to him. He's teaching he's telling them these things, and it's gonna be probably after the Spirit comes before he even understands any of this. He don't know what's going on. We could look at it now and be like, why don't he even know? But we got all of this stuff. But he's hearing it for the first time, and he don't get the connections. It is revolutionary. To him, it's like, what is he talking about? What do this even mean? But he's trying to help him, but it's interesting. He's helping him in the way when we look at it, it seems self-evident. But we have a wider scope at this time. So we got more light.
He's just trying to see it. It's like dim. No.
So look over at, so when we look, continue down, we read this, we want to read this again because we want to emphasize, read 11 through 14 here again.
Okay, truly, truly, I say to you, we speak what we know and witness what we have seen, and we do not receive or witness. If you do not believe when I speak to you about earthly matters, how are you going to believe when I speak to you about the heavenly matters? And no one has gone up into the heaven except he who came down from heaven, the son of Adam. 14, right?
14, yeah.
And as Moshe lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so the son of Adam has been lifted up.
Okay, so when we think about the idea of being born of water and being born of the Spirit, we have to, and then he even says, he's getting ready to say in verse 16 that whoever believes in me, whoever believes in me. And so when we look up, when we think about the example that he's given as far as Moses lifting up this serpent in the wilderness, the people in the wilderness and during the plague had to look up at that serpent in order to be healed. They had to look up at that thing. Yeah, you can take that whole thing over there. They had to look up at this thing that was lifted up, and they had to have a faith in the thing that the Most High instituted for their salvation at the time. And so, likewise, we have to be able to look at Y'shua and believe in him. And when we believe in him, by the way, it's interesting, these people, when they're believing, quote unquote, in Messiah, at that point, they're only able to believe in what they have at that time. Mm-hmm. Because he didn't die yet. Mm-hmm. He didn't raise from the dead yet. Mm-hmm. He didn't go back to the Father yet. He didn't send back his Ruach HaKodesh yet. All they know is what Nicodemus knew is that he must be from Elohim because he's doing all of these things. And so for them, that was the extent of their believing. But even in that, they're believing that Y'shua is whoever he says that he is. And so for us, that scope is larger. When we believe in whoever he said that he is, we got all of that. We got all of the things.
What's deep about it is you saying like this being in retrospect, when that serpent in the wilderness, Moses lifted up and cleansed the people, that they looked towards that and was cleansed. There was no example behind that.
Yeah.
But Y'shua came and cleansed, and there's an example that he left. So it's like, and that example, his spirit follows that.
Yeah.
When you follow him, you get his spirit. That's him pouring that spirit out on us.
Yeah.
Just want to throw that out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when he mentions that, when Messiah mentions that, this idea of lifting up the serpent, he's helping for Nicodemus to understand this idea of faith. This idea of believing. The New Testament is giving you the word believing. Whosoever is believing in him should not perish but have everlasting life. And the way we think about belief is kind of skewed because it's not just something that's a mental thing. It's interesting, this version here, so that whoever is believing in him. It's a thing that's going on. Just like how I'm believing in this chair that I'm sitting on.
It's an action behind it.
Go one of the black ones or one of the metal ones?
I sat purposefully on the metal one. I do not believe in that chair. I do not believe in that chair. I believe in this metal one. And that's why I'm sitting in it.
Exactly.
It's a thing that's going on right now. And so when we think about faith, it's something that you're consistently doing.
Yep.
You're walking in faith. It's not this thing, this idea that you have in your mind that's not being realized. Mm-hmm. It's something that you're doing. You are believing in it. And that word from a Hebrew perspective, aman, which Y'shua says it all the time, aman, truly, truly, verily, verily. He's basically saying the word faith. He says it so many times. But the word belief, the word faith is to trust, is to be firm. It's not wishy-washy. Oh man, should I go to this? Should I get this Happy Meal? Should I do this? Right? It's not like teeter-tottery, wishy-washy. It's firm. Right? Faith is firmness. You're committed. You're persuaded. If you're persuaded of a thing, can't nobody come around and make you be unpersuaded.
Yep. If
they could, you never was persuaded in the first place.
And that's what you're doing when essentially we evangelize and we talk to people is this information is supposed to trump whatever they got. Righteousness rules over wickedness. Yeah. If a person wants to be righteous and they hear righteousness, it's supposed to rule over their wicked thought and be like, you know what? Yeah. You're right.
Right. And that's what faith is. And so Y'shua is saying this thing that was exemplified through Moses with the staff and the pole and the serpent, and you look in this faith thing, is what this thing is with me. You're supposed to be able to look towards Y'shua in faith, and the result be life. The result be, because of you believing in me, the result be a spiritual transformation that happens on the inside of you. And so when we think about these words that he speaks over, and when he's talking about this whole idea of believing me and possessing everlasting life, I feel like Nicodemus, he's done at this point. Right? But he'll remember these things back. He'll be able to go back and know. But Y'shua, he says some interesting things. And these by the way, are in fact foundational things that he's dealing with. But when you think about these things, go ahead.
I just want to make sure you guys comment.
Oh, okay, I see. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they will not overflow you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned, and flame will not scorch you. Isaiah 43 and 2. What's the other thing she says there? Oh, how will the earth be cleansed and renewed the next time? Not with water, but with fire. We have to choose to be renewed with spirit water now before he returns with fire for cleansing. Yes. And so it's interesting, even with the earth got water and fire both. First was the water, then was the fire. Fire didn't happen yet. And when we think about Y'shua, where in John, where it talks about I baptize with water, but Y'shua baptized with fire. I think a lot of people talk about that fire and refer to it back as the spirit, but I don't know that. I think he's talking about judgment.
Yeah.
He's talking about the fire that didn't happen yet, not the spirit. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
He's comparing himself to Messiah. Said, I baptize with water, but there's one that comes after me that baptizes with fire.
Exactly.
When this place get baptized with fire, it's gonna burn up the stuff that ain't. It's gonna burn up the chaff.
Yep.
Right? And so even with that, it goes to the point that I'm about to make here is the fact that this whole thing is kind of accumulative.
Yep, it is.
Where we're able to look at these things and throughout time add more to the situation where, rightfully so, Nicodemus didn't have a full understanding, but this thing is accumulative, it's progressive, and not in the liberal sense of progressiveness, but the sense that it grows and adds to. And so over time, you're able to get these other things, and I kind of want to just, end off with thinking about these last few verses here, dealing with down in verse, 17. Let's read again John 3, 17 and 18.
So that whoever is believing in him should not perish, but possesses everlasting life.
We'll drop down to 17.
17. For Elohim did not send his son into the world to judge the world, but that the world through him might be saved.
See, it's interesting. Hold on a second. It's interesting because when we think about Messiah coming in, he said he did not send his son into the world to judge the world, but he sent him into the world at this time, but not for the judgment, though.
Right.
This is just the beginning part. When he comes back again, now it's going to be judgment time. And so even with this, there's an accumulative thing that happens, right? He came to do one thing at this time, but later he's going to come to do another thing. And if you're not on the right side of things, there's going to be problems, right? But look at verse 18.
He who believes in him is not judged, but he who does not believe is judged already, because he has not believed in the name of the only brought forth Son of Elohim.
So we have to understand, back to the point I was making earlier, we have to understand that our baseline, where we start off at, is being judged already.
Oh yeah.
So it's not just to me this term of waking up is kind of cringe worthy to me. It's cringe worthy to me. Because I need something to change in me. I don't need for somebody to tell me something about my physicalness. Because that's not changing.
About your filthiness, yeah.
I don't need for somebody to tell me who my daddy is, because that don't change me.
Right.
I need for my spirit to be revived inside of me. That's going to change me. Without that, Which the only way that my spirit is revived is if I believe in all that Y'shua is. At this point, what I know for him to have been, I know that he came and lived and died for my sins and went back to he rose from the dead, he went back to the Father and sent back his Ruach HaKodesh to come and live on the inside of me that I'm able to walk in it. When I say I believe in him, that's what I'm believing in. I'm not just believing that there was this guy who lived. Oh yeah, I believe there was this guy that lived, his name was Y'shua, and he lived back then. Yeah, I believe that he was a prophet. He was a great man of God, he was.
And I think a lot of people, the emphasis need to be put on not only that he lived and died, but he was the right example.
All of that.
But
all of those things.
No, people overlook that.
That's where they're wrong.
I'm telling you, that's it. They overlooked his example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's because everybody's looking at something that influences them. I got this because of this, or I see literally a commercial influences you to do something, to get something. A person gives you a recommendation. You see it, you do it because of that.
Yeah.
All your thoughts go back to some type of recommendation or familiarity or experience. Mm-hmm. So to look to him, who you have not seen, but believe his example was right to do it, is a real powerful thing. And you got to believe that he did the right thing.
Right.
And follow it.
Yes. And among other things, we're believing so many things. We're believing that he was the right sacrifice for us.
Right.
We're believing everything that he said about himself. We're believing everything that the scripture said about him. We're believing all those things. So it's so simple just to say, whoever believeth in me shall not perish but have everlasting life. It's so simple to say that, but when you think about what that's actually saying, what you're believing in, is a lot of things.
Exactly.
It's accumulative.
Right.
There's a lot of things that you're believing in when you believe that, so that you're able to experience that transformation.
You're supposed to be believing.
You must be believing.
You got a comment?
What is it? Okay. Hear, know, and do. Like the Shema, it is truly foundational. Yes, absolutely. And also, what this verse here, James 2:26. For as the body without the spirit is dead, so also is the belief or faith is dead without works. Right? There's no such thing as faith without works. Faith manifests works. Because I see your works, I understand that there's faith. Okay, so lastly, we just finish off. Just read 19 through 21.
Okay. It's still the same book.
Yeah, John 3.
John 3:19. And this is the judgment, that the light has come into the world, and men loved the darkness rather than the light, for their works were wicked.
Let me just say that the reason why this is the case, because again, this is the baseline. Darkness.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody said something about creation back up camp. In Bereshit, we see that the creation story as well, the spirit moved over the waters of the deep. The place was void, and it was without form. It was darkness. Because that's the baseline. And then came light. So light, who is Messiah, who came in the world, and the darkness didn't understand it. Men loved darkness rather than light. They loved the way they was rather than something that transformed them. And their works were wicked, verse 20.
For everyone who is practicing evil matters hates the light and does not come to the light.
I like how it's not even like soft.
That's
if you're
that's
practicing evil
straightforward.
matter, you hate the light.
That's straightforward.
It's not like you don't like it.
Yeah.
Like you hate it.
That's straight up.
You hate the light.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
At least his works should be exposed.
These people want to sit up here and do all these things. He's talking to somebody who's sneaking around, by the way. He's talking to somebody who's sneaking around, by the way. The master, Y'shua, he's so funny. He's a funny guy. I wish I could have actually seen him. He's like sad sneak dissing him a little bit.
Exactly.
But good.
But the one doing the truth comes to the light, so that his works are clearly seen, that they have been wrought in Elohim.
Okay, very good. So, kind of in closing here, we want to just think about the idea that Messiah here in John chapter 3 is giving these foundational principles to Nicodemus, apparently in the presence of John, because John, by the way, speaks about born from above probably more than anyone in the New Testament.
Yeah.
This is an idea that he brings forth mainly because he was able to experience this thing, must have been firsthand, right? And so it's important for us to be able to have this understanding within ourselves, first of all, so that we're able to see the kingdom of heaven. But when we want to share the truth of Messiah and understand and emphasize the importance of a literal spiritual transformation that's necessary inside of you, so that you're able to make it. And so, it's necessary for us to be able to, just like when we think about the emphasis on the born of water, born of the Spirit, to understand that there's a connection between the blood and the water and the Spirit, how there has to be a physical cleansing, how there has to be internal cleansing. You have to be cleansed in your mind. You have to be ceremonially cleansed. You have to be spiritually transformed on the inside. There has to be an actual spirit. The Spirit has to come on the inside of you and transform and change you so that you're able to walk in the ways of the Master. And so it's interesting that we see this kind of interaction here between Y'shua and Nicodemus and all of the things. We probably could talk about this for hours, but we have limited time here. So is there any last questions, comments before we go ahead and end for now? Looks like we got it.
It's like almost when I think about whenever you talk to someone, like Y'shua, he's not talking to a student right now, he's talking to a master, another master. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like two masters coming together.
Exactly.
We're not talking about something that's just like so simple and plain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like the Sabbath is from Friday sunset to Saturday sunset. They gonna talk about something that's like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like if just in general terms, if you're talking to someone, if Ebony's talking to another lactation consultant or something like that, like two people who study this field, she's not just gonna be talking about like latching. You guys are gonna probably talk about something that's really complex, controversial. Just have a regular conversation with someone who's an expert, two experts in the field coming together and having a conversation. If we went to some conference of like some rocket scientist people, quantum mechanics people, we probably wouldn't even know what they're talking about.
I don't know what they're talking about. Don't worry. It's like, nah.
Like, they're not gonna start talking about algebra concepts. They gonna start talking about wherever they those are and whatever level they're at. And so I think that this conversation should be studied because these things are coming from two masters coming together and having a conversation. Obviously, Yeshua is the master of masters because this guy that's a master can't really get with all the things that's coming forth.
And I think that the main thing that we want to go away from with dealing with John chapter 3 and the words of the Master is the fact that even considering the context in terms of this being this private conversation, these are probably some of the most important foundational concepts that Messiah talks about. Throughout the rest of his situation, he deals with entering into the kingdom of heaven, and the kingdom of heaven is like this and like that. But here he's really telling you and teaching us how to enter in. And then again, from the accumulative standpoint, for us to put the rest of these pieces together and understand, what all of these things actually mean. It's important for each and every one of us, and it's important for our own selves, and it's important for us in terms of expanding the kingdom and causing for other people to know as well. Okay, so that being said, we are going to go ahead and be done for now. Yah willing, we'll be able to come back on next Shabbat and continue our look at the words of the Master. All right, so for now, we'll say Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
And Yah willing, we'll see you next Shabbat.
Hallelujah.